Yeah, so welcome everyone. Tonight we have a very special guest. We have Arit, who is a mom of two, and she has a very interesting story because as she was breaking into tech, she started her boot camp. And correct me if I'm wrong, when your second child was only 4 months old.
That's correct,
Uh,
yes.
so I can't even imagine what it's like to go through that. And I know your journey hasn't been all smooth. It's been rocky as well. And I think that's what's great about how you broke into tech, because I think everyone on this call can relate to struggles, challenges, moments when you just want to give up. And that's why I'm especially excited to have Arit on the call to share with you how she did it and answer any questions. So first I want to say welcome, Arit.
Thank you, Timur. Thank you. That was great. Great summary.
Yeah, and so in a second we're gonna jump in and we're gonna cover all kinds of things like job search, like your personal background. But maybe you can start off by sharing what do you do today as a developer, just to give people an idea and like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, so thank you so much, Timur. So currently I work with Capterra, which is a subsidiary of Gartner Inc., and I'm one of the software engineers. And the majority of my responsibility is supporting our premier forward-facing site. So Capterra.com, we average about 20 million unique visitors every month. And so it's highly trafficked. And so my primary responsibility is managing and building out features and also fixing bugs for that main site and some other auxiliary sites as well. So that's in a nutshell what I do day to day.
Yeah, and that's a great summary. My girlfriend actually works for Gartner, so there's that. And 20 million is a lot of people. I think most companies, most websites maybe get a couple hundred.
Yeah.
20 million, it's a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders.
Right.
I'm sure people are going to ask you a lot of questions about your current role, but can you unpack a little bit about yourself? Did you get the traditional computer science degree? If
No.
not, how did you end up breaking into your current role?
Right. So my degree is in biology. At first I wanted to go into medicine, but halfway through college I changed my mind and I kept the biology degree, but I decided to pursue public health. And so when I graduated, I found a job as a public health analyst, just working in, basically what we did was we generated evidence-based reports for different government agencies like DOT and CDC and, that stuff. But my father is a sales engineer, has worked for many decades as a sales engineer. So I was surrounded by tech from a very early age with video games and computers and, I remember dial-up internet. I'm dating myself. And so even while I was on that science track, I remember when MySpace came out, I was on that. I know I'm dating myself. And then WordPress, I got into that. And so I kind of started, first of all, just building sites for myself. But then I started building small sites for friends or colleagues or just anyone who wanted some kind of presence on the web. So it's kind of always was in the background of my life. And so a pivotal point was when I was laid off from my public health analyst job because there was, the company was transitioning and merging and all kinds of stuff. And so I was laid off from that position. And this was about a year and a half after I had my son, my first child. And so I decided to stay home and grow my, I would say, fledgling web development interest into an actual agency. And so I did that for several years, and it was WordPress based, but I wasn't coding. I called myself like a WordPress implementer because I was just putting themes and plugins together, but I never actually touched the code. And so when things got to the point where I was attracting more serious clients, like small businesses in the neighborhood and things like that, I got to a point where I was getting frustrated with my inability to customize things beyond the template because I was never touching the code. And so that's when, and I was pregnant at the time when I made this decision, was I decided, okay, let me get into HTML, CSS, and kind of see what it's like. I didn't start with PHP, which is the backend code for WordPress, but I started with HTML, CSS, and I loved it. I was doing it very informally. I did Free Code Camp, Code Academy, and some other free resources. And my interest was growing, but I began to feel like my approach was haphazard. May have been related to the fact that I was, in my third trimester, but I felt very unfocused. And so that was when the idea of, I first looked at like local universities, and just the thought of going back to like a traditional school setting didn't attract me at all. And so that's when I started looking into boot camps. And I had never heard of coding boot camps until this moment. And I did my research. A lot of them have the mini boot camp, which is free to, for you to kind of have a taste. And I took about 4 or 5 mini boot camps before I settled on the one that I chose, which was the Firehose project. And so I spoke with, I was a little unsure, first of all, about the financial commitment and whether I really could do it. So I spoke with one of the co-founders, and he really put my mind at ease. He didn't try to sell me. And that's what I appreciated. Like, he listened to my background, and, he gave me good advice. And he was like, I tell you what, join for a month. If you don't like it, we'll prorate the payment, and, you'll just pay for the month. And so that helped me make the decision to join. And I'm so glad I did. It was very tough. I had a C-section, so I was healing from that, and I was nursing exclusively, so I was dealing with that. But thankfully, I was able to get through the 6 month. It's 6 months, and it's full time, 35 hours a week at least. Yeah. So I don't want to keep talking, but yeah. So did that, and then got into the job market, and I always say that was like the toughest, most demoralizing part of my journey, because it's the truth. But yeah, I went through the job hunt, and 6 months and a couple of days after I graduated, I landed my current role.
Wow. And we're going to unpack all of that.
Yeah.
I admire your tenacity to keep going, to take huge risks, especially like when there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And we're going to unpack all of that. My question to you is, you spent a lot of time before you did Firehose project or Firehose Bootcamp on your own, and then you did the Bootcamp. How did that experience compare for you?
Oh, I will never regret my bootcamp education, because for me, it brought the structure that I needed to make noticeable progress. Before bootcamp, on the YouTube, and I mean, you can learn a lot, but it seemed very disjointed for me. It didn't feel coherent. And maybe if I wasn't a new mother, and maybe if, I didn't have that responsibility at the time, I could have come up with my own curriculum and given myself direction. But just at that time, I felt like I needed a curriculum. I needed something that was progressive and built skill upon skill. And so the boot camp gave that to me. Which was invaluable. Like, just being able to look back after each month and see the apps that I had built and the skills that I had gained was just, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great overview. And I don't want to date myself, but I did a coding bootcamp in 2015. And back then, you literally had to go to the physical location. I had to quit my job, move to a new city, and go like spend 80 hours a week going to class. What was the format of Firehose? I know they're not around anymore because they got acquired, but I think since the time that you and I have gone through boot camps, there's now a lot more options online.
Yes.
Full-time, part-time. and a lot of options where you do income sharing, where you don't pay until you get a job.
Exactly.
What was your? Do you do their online course, or what was the
Yes.
format?
So Firehose was only online. So they didn't have any in-person option. Yes. But they had a full-time and a part-time track. And so the full-time was the minimum 35 hours a week expected, including your mentoring time, like basically all the time you spend. And then the part-time track was estimated to be about 20 hours a week, thereabouts. But it was completely online. And the wonderful thing about it is all the lessons and the modules were already set. And so you weren't like limited by an instructor, for example, or there's going to be a lecture that could be canceled. All the video and the audio and the exercises and everything was already laid out on the app, on the website, the workspace that we logged onto. And so this was instrumental for me because I was able to accelerate. And so I was able to make progress ahead of schedule, ahead of the full-time schedule. Yeah. And so that left considerable amount of time toward the end for me to go back and improve my apps or add new features, because I was able to finish the actual coursework ahead of time because everything was already laid out. So that was an aspect that I appreciated. Yeah.
And I know everyone has a different learning style. Some people literally need to see the whole syllabus right up front and come up with a plan every day, 2 chapters or 2 hours a day, and go down that path. I have a lot of questions. I know community also has questions.
Yes.
Last question is about the work that you're currently doing with helping other moms. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. I consider it a calling to support and help and encourage as many people as want to transition into tech, especially those who are coming from another career, and especially moms. And so I do that in several ways. I'm a member of a number of Slack groups where women and moms who are breaking into tech congregate. And so I'm active there. I'm active on Twitter as much as I can be. I am a mentor. There's a cool program called Moms Can Code. It's run by Erica Peterson. And it's literally like a sort of like an incubator for moms who are seeking specifically to break into remote tech jobs. And so it's all about getting you a remote job, right? And so I'm one of her mentors. And so every cohort, I'm able to mentor the cohorts that come through, and that's been very rewarding. So as much as I can with whatever free time I have, I try to make myself available to those breaking in, just as people make time for me. So
I think that's certainly what's driving my co-founders and I, because we know what it was like to be on the outside, thinking how scary this world is, without knowing really what code is either. And there's a lot of people who helped us get to where we are today. And I respect and appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think this is a perfect segue to open it up for our community. I would ask our community to just introduce yourself before you ask the question, and then you can ask Arit any question you want.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for being here and for doing this AMA. I really admire the fact that you're giving back. I hope that I will be able to do the same. My name's Zazania, but I go by Z, and I'm currently in the Thinkful Bootcamp trying to make a career transition. And my question is 2 parts. One, did you have a program manager or some sort of coach that helped you with the job search process? And also, what do you think was the hardest part about the job search process?
Wonderful questions. So the Firehose project had what they called a career I forget the name, like a career track. And so once you got to a particular point in the program, not that you finished the program, but once you got to a particular point, they unlocked the career path. And basically that was a series of exercises to get you job ready. So as far as your resume, your GitHub repos, just sort of finessing your profile a bit more and getting you job ready. And it also they also unlocked the algorithm maze, which was like a number of progressively harder algorithms, so you could get like whiteboarding practice, for example. So that was the extent of career prep that I had before I started applying for jobs. As far as the hardest part, that's a good question. I feel like there were several hard parts. I struggled with deciding which jobs to apply to, because you read all the requirements and it's like maybe you know like 50% of them. And there was never a job that I read that I knew everything. And so right out the bat, I was already intimidated. And so that was hard, like deciding to apply and putting myself out there. Out of the dozens of jobs that I applied for, I only got 3 on-sites, one of which is my current job. So I didn't really have a lot of experience with face-to-face, but definitely like the in-betweens. Like I appreciated more take-homes than coding like HackerRank or, online challenges. Those were so stressful. And usually I found myself taking them during the day. And that would be the day when my daughter like decided not to sleep, or just the day would just go left. And so there was one time that I was taking a HackerRank challenge, and there were just so many distractions and so many interruptions. Like I pretty much gave up, and I didn't complete it. And I was like, look, I withdrew my application because it was just a very tough day. So I would say, those 2 parts. Mm-hmm.
Hi.
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 Hi, Stacy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
I'm in a program, Treehouse apprenticeship program right now.
I know about them.
But I'm also a member of the Moms Can Code community. I'm not in the cohort, but I'm in the community. So
awesome.
It was great that you mentioned that. And it's awesome that you went through the program, the boot camp, being pregnant and having a baby. And I wanted to know, because I'm a mother as well. And I wanted to know, what was your strategy like learning while having kids,
So I was fortunate. I wasn't working. Like I said, I had my consultancy. And so I was able to stop taking clients effectively. So I was able to stop working, and I wasn't working out the home. So my spouse was carrying the bulk of the financial responsibility with his job. And so that was a plus. I know a lot of moms don't have that option necessarily, but I like to say that so it doesn't look like, it's more super than it was, So I was able to be home during the day with the baby. And so my strategy was, because during the day, like, I'm taking care of a 4-month-old, a 5-month-old, right? And so during the day, I prioritized watching videos, watching tutorials, like bite-sized tasks, like maybe working on an algorithm or part of an algorithm, anything that didn't require too much mental energy and too much focus, I did during the day while I was with the baby. And then my baby went to bed right around 7:30. Like, she went down for the night, even though she was going to wake up, but she went to bed around 7:30. And so from when she went to bed till about 11:30 p.m., that was the time I used for deep focus work. And so working on my bootcamp exercises, building my apps, building out features, anything that required me to focus. I prioritized sleep training my daughter early on. And so I sleep trained her by right around 4 months, at least to go down in the evening. So I didn't have this like go down, wake up 1 hour later, go down. I didn't have that. So her deepest sleep was around that 7:30 time. And so I would have about 3 to 3.5 hours of uninterrupted time. So that's when I did my deep focus work. And then right around 11:30, 12 was when she would wake up to nurse. And so then I would nurse her and then go to bed. So that was my routine. Yeah, that was my routine for much of my time in boot camp. And that's kind of how, I mean, I was exhausted, but that, and then on the weekends, I did nothing. So Monday through Friday, I would work, but Saturday, and like, I would not pick up my laptop on the weekends. So that was, yes, that was like, if I didn't do that, I think I may have like broken down, but I had 2 solid days where I didn't even fire up my laptop. I didn't look at a line of code. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got through the 6 months.
Okay, great. I'm a mom too, so I'm trying to push through it. I do it in the evenings, and the weekends I try to do more.
Okay.
So
that's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I also add that we talk a lot about coming up with your roadmap for the whole transition, and looking at a path that doesn't just like get you there, but like it almost gets you there with 0 risk, even though it's impossible to have 0 risk. But what I mean by that is sometimes people, they want to get it over with and they go into full time without realizing that they may not even have the time to do something full time. And so in those cases, it's important for you to know like how many hours a week you have. And then there's options like part-time, there's options like self-paced. So there's always an option, but people should optimize for like a path that might be longer, but still gets you there, versus trying to cram like something into a 3-month or a 6-month boot camp if you feel like you're going to be overextended. And I think you did a great job, like knowing how much time you had, you knew your learning style. And so going into it, you knew roughly like those 35 hours, like how you were going to allocate them in a way so you can keep up and even stay ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't like that out the gate. I know like in the first month, a lot of it was trial and error. And with my baby being so young, but I think once I got her on that schedule of, I know she's going down to sleep between 7 and 7:30, that was when that schedule manifested. Once I had that, because my son is much older. He at the time was almost 6. And so for the most part, he's self-sufficient. He can pretty much, feed himself, put him, so like practically I had just one child. And so once that one child was on a schedule, then I could plan around that. Yeah.
Great.
Hi, Arit.
Yes.
I'm Harsha. So I got sick. My voice is not so bad. Yeah. So I'm not a mom. I'm single. Still, I wanted to hear from you, like what would be the experience about this course and career karma and this program. So I'm so glad that I joined this meeting. So this is my first time. So I'm at my early ages. So I'm so eager to have a discussion with Taimur and you regarding this course. Last night only I joined. So yeah, I'm only looking for a part-time and self-paced. Right now I'm working.
Okay.
So can you please suggest me how can I manage, like, so from 9 to 6 I have some work in my office, and right now I'm doing a software engineering job only, but I'm not up to the point. So that is not a application from scratch. That is an existing application. I'm doing like a maintenance activities type of work. It's like taking existing code and modifying and getting fixes done. So only that part, but I'm not seeing myself as a professional software engineer as of current. So I wanted to see myself as a professional software engineer in future. So can you please suggest me how to compete with the current uh, technology and everything, the people, because that would be so helpful for me because I'm 20, I think I'm 27. So I wanted to see myself as a strong coder. So please help me out some with your suggestions and all.
Well, the first thing I would say is if you are already touching code, that's awesome. So if you have access to code, you're working on a code base, even if it's just modifying existing code, like and it's a professional setting. You said that you don't consider yourself a software developer. You are a software developer.
Yeah, I am a software developer,
Okay,
but what I'm saying is, so when I go into that coder, hacker code, something apps, so when I started resolving that, I'm not able to. So I'm just checking online, okay, what is the methods, and I'm going there and I'm able to do it after seeing there, but I'm not up to the point actually.
So what it sounds like to me is you're at a point where you want to level up your skill. And that is a lifelong process. So no one is ever going to be done leveling up their skills and their abilities. And so what I would say is if I know there's a website out there, and Career Karma, I mean, it's great that you're with Career Karma because I know they have so many resources to help identify and apply and, you know, land a position in a boot camp that suits your life and your schedule. I know for research purposes, there's a website out there called switchup.com, I think, and another one, Course Report. And those are, I'll probably send the links to Timur and he can send it to everyone. But
and I also wanted to tell you that I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering. I did my master's in electrical engineering.
Okay.
So through my friend, there are some job opportunities available in Java. So 2 months I took like YouTube courses in Java and learning, and I joined the first job, which was good. But like normal things, I'm not able to hit that strong skill programming and all. So
I think what you really need, and it sounds like you're there, but I think what you just need to focus on is practicing. I still suck at algorithms. Like if you throw an algorithm at me right now, I'll probably hesitate like a whole week. And that's after working almost 10 months now. And so a lot of this just comes with practice. And so the fact that you're working with code already professionally, that's awesome. So I would say just keep practicing. And if you can stay consistent with your practicing, you will get better. It's almost inevitable. If you stay consistent and keep exposing yourself to the different computer science concepts, everything that goes into being able to write algorithms or solve problems, keep exposing yourself, you will absorb the information. It's almost inevitable. So the key thing is just the consistency and to keep working on it. Okay.
Through your speech, I got it like, so I didn't have any exposure to algorithms. I just know the Java basics, OOPS concepts, that's it. That's the entry of my job. I didn't know anything about the algorithms, but I've gone through, like I read some things in algorithms, but in my current job, they're not using like, so which is the optimized way to run this program and all, they're not doing it.
Right.
Harsha, sorry to interrupt. So we actually have, I know you might have just joined recently Career Karma. You actually should have a coach who would be reaching out to you. And there are also people who started on Career Karma, just like a lot of people on the call. And you'll be able to ask all of your questions to the coach, because they also went through the phases of literally like not knowing anything at all, doing the challenge and then learning. It never ends in terms of like feeling confident, because there's so much to learn. But the best thing you can do is be on calls like this and ask a lot of questions and go back what Arit said. it does sound like if you even went on free code camp and you just did like 2 or 3 projects on there,
Okay.
you would have more confidence because you would know how these technologies come together.
Yeah, you are correct. So if we do application from the scratch, we'll get to know everything. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
and it's a journey. So keep going.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of squads on the app that you can work with. So join them and stay in touch.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Arsha. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So, hey.
Hey,
Hi.
Angela.
Hey, how you doing? So,
Hi, Angela.
Arit, I want to say thank you so much. You're so inspiring for all of us women who are moms and balancing all of our activities. And I'm so glad I tuned in on this one because I've been struggling between, I got accepted to a few camps and I just can't decide. I want to go all in and go full time, but I have 3 kids. I got a husband who travels. And most recently, I'm taking care of a mom who has Alzheimer's. So, you know, I got accepted. I was like, oh, I'm going to start in January full time. My mom got sick this last week. Everything went crazy. My whole schedule went wrong. And I just realized how, you know, I think I have everything in control of my schedule. And I've been studying every night, doing my regular schedule, but you can't control everything. So it's kind of nice to hear you say how you took it at your own pace. You still got through it, because my worry was if I take it at my own pace, I'm not going to get through it. But maybe that's more reality being a mom.
Yes.
I can accelerate myself if I just stay on schedule, but then I'm not worried. I don't want to drop out of something that I've invested this much time and money and I want this change.
Right.
So I love hearing you and Tamer talk about it because I think it worries all of us. And you feel like you want to go all in and you want to make this big change, but it has to be acceptable to be at your own pace, I guess. So
and it's scary.
Thank you. It is scary. And I'm just, I'm nervous because I'm like, oh, I'm going to quit my job. I've been doing this for years. How am I, maybe if I at my own pace that I can still kind of hang on to the job while I'm doing this too. So thank you. No, it's very inspirational, and that you were doing it while you were nursing a baby, and I couldn't even think straight during that phase. So I'm impressed. That's amazing.
Thank you. I think I was a little mad. Yeah. At the time. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And Angela, I just want to say that you are going all in, even if you do part-time. You know, everyone has their own timeline, and everyone has their own unique path. And on the outside, it might seem like some people in your squad who may have joined after you already started or not. But what you don't want to do is start and then things come up or you fall behind and you have to drop out. So I think what Arit said about her doing prep courses before for different schools, if you're already doing that, like keep doing that. Look into part-time options or self-paced, and keep pushing yourself, and eventually you'll reach that point.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you.
I have a question. So like I said, I'm starting Flatiron in about a month. I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm doing the full-time, and I think I have my schedule worked out so that it's all gonna work. I hope. We'll see. And I've been doing, you know, the prep course and whatnot, and that's all going really well. And I'm, I don't want to say I'm feeling confident, but like I'm feeling like, you know, I'm really enjoying the work I'm doing, and I'm feeling like I'm able to do it. What I am most scared of is like getting to the end of the boot camp and feeling like I'm applying to jobs, and no offense to anyone out there, and I'm competing with a bunch of like 22-year-olds and just feeling totally out of my element, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Despite like how much prep I've done or how confident I feel with the material.
Yes.
So especially I'm a career changer. I've been a teacher for 10 years.
Yes.
So I just, you know, I feel just like I'm going to be competing just totally out of my league. I don't know if you can comment on that at all, or.
I can. So I'm in my late 30s. And actually at my current workplace, I'm one of the oldest on my team. And that was something that worried me as well when I started, especially when you have a few phone screens or a few like Zoom calls, you know, and it seems everyone who's interviewing you is so much younger than you. I think for me, the way I got through that was, first of all, I'm not going to pretend to be who I'm not, or I'm not going to pretend to have skills that I don't have or abilities that I don't have yet. So I knew that that approach would automatically disqualify me from some positions. And I think the key thing is to keep in mind that you aren't really trying to be attractive to everyone out there. You know, you can't really. And I think embracing that truth and rolling with it brings a certain level of freedom. At least it did for me, was realizing that I probably may not land a Facebook job or a job at Microsoft or Google, you know. Like, I would talk with other bootcamp grads who were aiming for those type of companies, and I don't have anything against them, but for me, I knew that the cutthroat way that they interview just wasn't for me. So from the beginning, I formulated an idea for the kind of company I wanted to work with anyway. The second thing, or the second strategy I would suggest, in which I used, was really be bold about bringing your whole self to your interviews. And so you don't need to be one-dimensional. You don't need to put off this image of, you know, like you're a coding whiz, even though, yes, you do code and, you know, you do have these skills and abilities. But one thing that I know impressed the few on-sites that I went on, I know one thing that impressed them was my ability to talk about meeting client needs, translating client requirements to a solution, or because that's what I was doing as a WordPress consultant. Even though I wasn't coding, I was locating my clients myself. I was drafting contracts, and so I was able to bring that business sense to my interviews, even though it's not directly related to programming, right? And so at the end of the day, being older comes with its benefits. And quite frankly, you know, we hear about ageism and, you know, all this stuff out there. But for me, I did what I could to make it work for me. And at the end of the day, I feel like I'm not even interested in working in an environment where I feel my age or my life experience is being used against me or is influencing the way that I'm received or perceived anyway. And so I acknowledge the fear because I felt it too. But I think once you start getting out there and once you get a sense for where you want to work, you'll realize that the places you want to work, that isn't going to really matter. And then you'll experience the freedom that I did, in the sense that I didn't have to be afraid anymore that, you know, I'm competing with, I mean, yes, in a sense you are, but by the time they're asking to talk with you after your initial application, I mean, that's interest, you know what I mean? And so it's the one job you're looking for, right? You're not looking for 10. And so, you know, does that help? I mean, I acknowledge how you feel, because I felt that way. Yes.
That does help.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think everyone goes through this phase of, initially when you start the boot camp, your goal is to one sec, let me mute someone. Is get through the course, and then you hit the job search, and you're like, I didn't realize the job search is going to be like a boot camp, but there's no roadmap anymore, right? And so in the job search, it literally comes down to now you like looking inwards and asking yourself, like, what kind of companies do I want? What am I good at? Like, how do I tell my story? Because now you're actually working on selling your story and like your skills to the company. And so that also is a journey. Like in the beginning, when you start coding, nothing seems to work. In the beginning, when you start the job search, no, you're not gonna get any responses, but the responses that you do get will turn into either coding challenges that you can't solve or rejections. And kind of like the reason it might sound like kind of scary is that they're just part of you never going through that job search process before. And then you have to start going through it, and then you start getting better and better and better, until you reach a point where companies actually want you. But for you to get to that point, you need to go through, like, you kind of need to go in expecting that you are going to get rejected. But so what? You just did an interview. They spent an hour asking you questions. You didn't get the job, but you learned something that you should probably learn in order to do better next time. Right. So, and like Arit said, you only need one job, and there are thousands and thousands of companies out there. So whenever you feel scared or you feel like this company is going to reject me, just go on Google, type in like companies like Walmart need tens of thousands of engineers. Chase, we had someone from Chase a couple of weeks ago. They're trying to hire like 12,000 engineers for next year. Like, there's a lot of companies that need developers, and not all companies are going to be the same. And it's on you to also do the research, reach out to people, and take the back door instead of the front door.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. We have about 15 minutes. Anybody wants to jump in and ask any more questions?
Me? Hello?
We'll get to both of you. One of you. Go ahead, Latasha.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Latasha.
Hi, nice to meet you. What drew me to this particular webinar was the fact that when I was reading the description and it said WordPress consultant, I kind of just zoned in on that because I've had experience with that. Now, in my case, I'll be 45 in December.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. But I do want to make some adjustments along my journey. I do actually have coding experience from the 90s. I studied math, computer science, undergrad, and I took languages. I don't know if y'all heard these languages like Pascal, COBOL. Yeah, that's stuff I took. And I got my bachelor's degree, and I decided to go back to school years later to go into graphic design. And all the graphic design, it worked out pretty good, but it's very competitive now because there's so many DIY options.
Yes.
So that's when I decided to get into web design. I learned some HTML, CSS while in design school. But I feel like I need to up my game by knowing how to write scripts. And in terms of WordPress, I really want to be able to build things myself.
Right.
Maybe some plugins or some UX UI stuff. So I feel like I need to do a little bit more than what I'm doing. Have you done anything like that with WordPress at all, or are you just strictly coding?
Not with WordPress. So like I said, when I worked with WordPress, it was just putting, customizing themes within the UI and implementing plugins within the UI. I never got into the code. And I know the PHP is what WordPress is built with. I've worked with PHP at work, but I never learned it. But you know what they say, like once you learn one, maybe like, for example, OOP language, you can pretty much pick up others, if you put into
I
it.
agree. I noticed when I started looking at JavaScript, I'm in Flatiron School. It's very similar to Pascal.
Right.
I start seeing like, variables, arrays. I remember those things.
Right. So, so you can pick it up. So no, I haven't worked in WordPress code per se. But I know several people who work with WordPress PHP, and it's, there's some sort of unofficial argument out there about whether PHP is dead. PHP is far from dead. I can definitely say that. And so I definitely encourage you to get in, like if your interest is in building themes. I interviewed with a company that's what they do. They just build WordPress themes, and they build it with React on the front and, ship it, implement them for companies and ship it out and do the maintenance and everything. And so the jobs are there. And so I would definitely encourage you to get in on the PHP and, start building. I mean, there's so many and WordPress has a rich plugin community. And I mean, it's among CMSs, it's the most popular CMS. And so it's definitely a good choice. So I encourage you to get in on that and start building some cool stuff. You're muted.
Natasha, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, it said hit the space key. It didn't work. But anyway, but thank you very much for that input. I have adjusted code before in WordPress a little bit. I've dug into the back end a little bit, but like just building stuff from scratch, no. So yeah, the PHP, huh? Okay.
Yes.
I would also add to that. In the past, I've built a few like WordPress sites from templates for people who may never heard of WordPress. It's basically like a way to get your stuff on the website without writing code, and a lot of it is just like dragging and dropping. You can add things to the page. And so you can get actually your profile, like there's also websites now like Squarespace, a bunch of others that help you get your webpage up. My advice would be to like really focus on your goal a year from now, right? If your goal is, if you want to develop a competency and specialty in WordPress, then try like, there's a lot of tutorials. It might not be easy at first, but you're going to go deeper. You're going to learn technologies and how it works. And then you're going to become an expert. If your goal is to, let's say, build web development apps like React apps, then you want to think about like how you spend your like mental energy and your time. So I would just challenge everyone on the call to think a year from now, like where do you want to be first, and then work your way backwards to what you should be doing today. Because there's a lot of paths you can take. You can go the self-learning route. You can go the bootcamp route. So it just really depends on what will make you happy like a year from now, you know?
Okay.
We have about 10 minutes left, so we can take a few more questions.
I have a question. While I'm listening to you, I imagine, okay, I have graduated the bootcamp. Now I'm doing job search. I have 3 university degrees in public policy, political science, international affairs, but I don't have any coding experience. And don't you think I am right to be nervous that I will not be as competitive as others who already come from backgrounds like you, like even though you didn't actually code it, but you were doing something related to web design, this or that. Don't you think people from social sciences who come in just do the boot camp, and then when they're at the interviews, are we going to face, or do we have to start from really low? Is it okay to be nervous?
Armin, I think you're breaking up. Your audio is breaking up, but let me rephrase your question and tell me if that's what you mean. You're saying like if you're coming from not just like if you're coming from outside of tech, but you're not coming from a background of like having anything to do with tech like social sciences or some other field, are you at a disadvantage versus people who also didn't know how to code, but they had some familiarity with coding, right? Is that your question? Okay.
Yes, it is the question.
Okay. Thank you, Armine. Thank you. Actually, what I found just from talking with different people and even with the team that I work with currently, non-traditional backgrounds are desirable because you bring, coding is so much more than just the syntax and what you're writing and what you're creating. It's also the filter through which you're doing your work and the richness of the background that you're bringing. No one codes in silos anymore. Like, you're not going to be in some, broom closet office just coding 24/7. I would say during a typical day at work, I probably code, if I'm working 8 hours, I probably code between 4 and 5. The rest of that time is meetings, strategizing, I mean, there's just so much that goes into supporting, whether it's an established company or a startup. Startups even more so benefit from diverse backgrounds. And so I'm saying that to say there's no disadvantage to coming from whatever background you're coming from, because you are who you are. And the important thing is, if you're interested in coding and you're interested in a career in coding and programming, that's it. You don't have to worry about your background. It may be a little harder for you if, you know, naturally maybe you're not so technical, but there's nothing that can't be learned. And it sounds cliche, but it's the truth. There's nothing that can't be learned. The only prerequisite is the desire to learn and the commitment to the process. That's it. And I've seen people coming from social science. I've seen people coming from health. I've seen people coming from teaching. I know we have a teacher on here. I mean, the backgrounds are as diverse as ever. But what binds us is our desire to learn and to solve problems in the world through programming, through code. That's what binds us all. And so, just be encouraged. It really doesn't matter. And in actual fact, that might be the aspect of your profile that actually attracts a future employer to you. That might be the very thing that makes them want to hire you. Yes, you code well, but wow, she has this rich background in social sciences. And so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. I want to pass the mic to, is it Sim?
Yeah.
Or at least that, hey Sim, go ahead, jump in.
So I had a question regarding the bootcamp. I was enrolled in a bootcamp. It was quite rigorous for 6 months, and I was working full time for part of it. I, sort of decided that I'll take it more focus on that bootcamp and then take a leave from work, because that was a possibility at that point of time.
Okay.
And I just thought of giving my full time, but I had other commitments, my family, kids, and everything.
Right.
And I did my best during that time. But it was like, after doing that, also I have my own GitHub repo and my own resume, because I've been working in this field for not exactly development, but other stuff, but in IT only for quite number of years, like almost 7-8 years.
Okay.
So just wanted to know, like, once I start floating my resume, I just put up my LinkedIn or something. 2 questions, like, if I had been like as a support person, where I had been looking at the code, or as a QA engineer, or as a automation engineer, how do I change my profile in my LinkedIn? Like, I put my previous profile, like experience, or as a coder now?
Well, your LinkedIn and anything else that you're using to represent yourself needs to reflect your objective, right? And so if your objective is to get a job in programming, even though you have experience in other fields, you need to present that experience with a spin that lets the reader know that your interest is programming. So let me give an example. When I worked as a WordPress consultant, I didn't code. There was no code whatsoever. But when I included that experience in my LinkedIn, I made sure to quantify what I was able to do for my clients in technical terms. So for example, if I was able to help a client, like through creating a booking process for them, for example, a client was able to reduce no-shows by a certain amount. I put those concrete data in my write-up of that job to send the message that I am optimization minded. I'm thinking about the bottom line. I'm thinking about what is ultimately important to companies, which is the bottom line. And so you can definitely put your experience as you have it with being a QA or automation QA, whatever you've done, but always keep in mind your objective. And I do a lot of resume review for new devs looking for their first job. And one thing I see in resumes is they just describe whatever jobs they've worked in the past as is, like, and I'm reading this write-up and there's no connection whatsoever to what they say they want to do. And so I think that's a way to creatively tweak your profile. Definitely, we're not lying and we're not embellishing, but you want to put whatever spin you can on that job description so that as I'm reading it, I can see that, oh, even though she was doing something else, oh, I see the connection basically between what she was doing and what she now wants to do, or the direction she's going. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so maybe like the recent projects that I have done, describe them more, like.
Yes.
And how, like, once I did the project, because it was a rigorous, there were timelines. So
Okay.
the whole objective was not to polish the project like to the best, but to submit it on time. So right now, if my assignments or projects are there in the GitHub repo, but they are not in the best state, I don't feel like this is the best I can do. I can do much better than that, but it needs more time or revisiting those. So what do you feel like, what is the, do they need it like a really good looking one, or how do they expect from a newcomer?
This is a great question. I actually wrote an article on this week, actually. So it's interesting that you asked that question. So in my opinion, I think that anyone looking at your GitHub repos shouldn't have to guess what's happening. That's kind of like my rule. So whether a project is finished or unfinished or abandoned or whatever, don't leave the viewer guessing what is the status of what I'm looking at. And so that's where your README is very powerful. And so use your README to communicate exactly what you want that person to know about the project they're looking at. If it's an abandoned project, explain why it was abandoned. If it's a project that's not finished, write out the features that are finished and the features that are planned, like write out your roadmap. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, definitely there's no pressure for your GitHub to be perfect, by no means. But I think what a lot of us do is we just kind of leave things the way they are, and you put that hiring manager in the position of having to guess, and, ain't nobody got time for that, And so use your README. The README is a very powerful tool to communicate exactly what that repo is about and what the state is and what your plans are for it. Yeah, and it also makes you look, it makes you look focused, Mm-hmm. I think repos without README, the code may be so awesome behind those folders, but an insufficient README makes it look sloppy, in my opinion. Yeah.
So two very questions. So one is that, if I'm planning for a freelancing, once I feel like, okay, I have enough sufficient knowledge for that, what's the route for going about it? Because being a mom, I feel like, at some point of time, if I can do that, that would be a great thing for me.
Yes, I understand. Yes, I was freelancing before I started this job, so I have a bit of experience there. There's many ways to do that. It depends on how comfortable you are marketing yourself. If you have an extensive social network and you are comfortable putting yourself out there, certainly put yourself out there. Let your network know that you are open for business. What I would do to get some business sometimes is, if I saw a website that I felt I could improve, I wouldn't spend too much time on it, but I would create a mock-up that looked significantly better than the business's current website. Then I would send it to them.
Okay.
and be like, this is what I can do for you. I got so many clients that way, just by not spending a whole lot of time, but just the front page, just like upgrading like the UI or whatever. And I would have a proposal waiting as well. And so when they showed interest, I would just shoot them the proposal. And you know, I got a lot of business that way. So that's one way of doing
Through
things.
your contacts, right? That you were knowing those people.
What is that now?
It was through your contacts, right? That you were knowing
Yes.
those people.
Right. Or like, you know, businesses in my neighborhood and things like that. And then I know there's a number of sites like Upwork.com, Fiverr, although, you know, but you know, I know Upwork is a good one. So you can go that route as well and have profiles on those websites and get business that way. But I don't know. I feel like the more organic way would be more fruitful.
Yeah. Let me also add, I think when it comes to freelancing, I think the glamour of it is you are your own boss,
Right.
and you get to make your own schedule. But with that comes a lot of like, it takes a certain type of person who likes that flexibility to also realize like what are their strengths. If you want to be able to, like, if you have the capability of like market yourself, source clients, project manage, and code, that could be a very like lucrative career.
Mhm.
But I would say if the goal is like, if you want to ask yourself like, what do I really want, and maybe you just want to be home with your kids and work and have money coming in, then you're probably better off finding a remote job.
Yeah.
That way you just work like 40 hours a week, and then you have no headache about next month, like where your clients are going to come, what the deadlines are. You show up at 9, you leave at 5, and you work from your house, and you can take breaks during the day and like manage your time however you want. So just be very deliberate with what your ultimate goal is. And also like be patient, because if you're just starting out and this is your first job and your first career, there's a lot of benefit in working with other engineers on the team.
Yes.
And they're gonna invest resources into making you better. So why wouldn't you want other senior engineers to mentor you, review your code, make you better? After a few years, then you can, once you feel confident, then you can go off on your own or get a remote job, and then you're just getting stuff done, but then you're managing your time however you want.
So finding a remote job, what's the best way to do that?
Ooh.
You start applying to remote companies. People don't think that there's a lot of companies that have remote jobs, but keep in mind that there's like the balance of number of people that want remote jobs is obviously greater, and there's more jobs that are in person. So you can still get it. You just need to then only apply to remote jobs and then reach out to people. And when I say apply, like reach out to people at companies, build relationships with them. Don't just apply online, because if you just apply online, it's very likely you won't get a call back. So then you need a specific strategy for how to tackle those types of jobs. But I would say it sounds like at this point you're in the job search process. And so to take it back to your previous question, and this applies to everyone on this call, because I know some are starting boot camps, some are going to be preparing for boot camps. Ultimately, on your resume, your projects are going to be able to show your employer that you know the technologies that they're using.
Yes.
And so you want to highlight whether you were a freelancer before or you did QA, but at the top of your resume, whatever you got going there, put like 2 or 3 projects that you're proud of, that demonstrate what you've learned. Because in most interviews, a question that you're almost guaranteed to have is tell me about a project you've built, or tell me about a problem you solved.
Yep.
And knowing that that question is going to come up, you now have 6 months to work on a project or a problem that's going to impress your employer. So think strategically. Don't put the burden on your hiring manager to go to your GitHub and like code review your stuff.
Yes.
There's so many applicants that it's unlikely they're going to be looking at the actual code. But what they will do is they'll take 20 seconds and they'll click on a link, So whatever project you build, make sure it looks good and it's on the web. And they'll look at your website, and if it's a game or whatever, they'll play with it, and that will impress them enough for them to then look further. Maybe they'll check out your GitHub after. But initially, you want to just grab their attention with like how good your project looks.
And one last question. If there are some topics that you're not very confident about, and those are maybe very hot in the market, like React or something, and you want to really go in depth, and you have the material, but there might be some some points that you want to work or you need help, what's the best way to get that?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I know for me, when I was learning, I tried to join. I mean, Slack is, there's so many Slack communities, because when I completed my boot camp, for the most part, my cohort just kind of scattered, because we're done. And I had my mentor, but he was gone mentoring the newer cohorts. So for the most part, I kind of felt like, okay, I couldn't really lean on my bootcamp people anymore. And so I would join these code buddies. Codebuddies.com is a great community. Also, Dev2 is a great community. I would join these communities of programmers. And, for the most part, people are very enthusiastic about making themselves available to help. And so I found people who are willing to pair program with me. I try to do that now. I don't have that much free time, but I try to pair program with new devs who are job seeking or still learning and, upskilling. But I was never without that one or two people that, are just willing to spend 30 minutes of their time just pair programming with me and helping me to fix a bug or an issue. But the key is getting in on those communities and, just being active and, being transparent, I think goes a long way to endearing people to you.
I think that's what I'm needing right now.
Yeah.
So it says like Code Buddy and Dev2.
Yes, codebuddies.org, I think it is, and dev.to. Those are great developer communities. Yes.
Yeah, and I want to also emphasize that if you are in career karma, right? Like look around. You got people who are different stages. So we have a number of people who are now in the job search phase. So you can, like, if that's something you want to do, reach out to me if you can find them. But there's already a number of squads. I think there was one started today for like preparing for the job search and building projects. So just join them, and you already have people who are in the same boat as you, and just keep reaching out and meeting people, and like you'll find others to code with. There's 32 people on the call right now. I do want to wrap up. Thank you, Sim, for all the questions. I want to wrap up because I know there's a lot of parents. I know Arit has to get back to her kids as well tonight. My last question is, so I know, Arit, you left your email in the chat, right? Is that the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yes, it is the best way. I'm on Twitter as well. Twitter and email are the best ways to reach me. Yes.
Let me drop your Twitter on here as well in case people want to tweet. I'd love people to tweet at Arit and share what you've learned. The last question that I just dropped the handle in the chat. The last question that I always ask is, how did you deal with imposter syndrome?
Yes.
If you felt it, and what advice do you have for our community?
I did feel imposter syndrome a lot when I started my job. And the way I've dealt with it is really transparency. I feel like just be who you are, both the parts of you that are competent and the parts that maybe are not so competent. And so, but, don't talk yourself down. So like, for example, at my job, when I first started, if I didn't understand something, I would speak up and ask for help. And, thankfully, I have a very supportive team at work. And my team, like, I'm the only junior, and then there's a couple of mid-level, and then the rest are seniors. So I have like about 4 seniors on my team, and everyone is so willing to help. And so I found, instead of dwelling on that feeling of imposter syndrome, step out of the feeling and ask for what you need. If it's help, ask for it. If it's clarification, ask for it. If it's more time to work on something, ask for it. I think once you step out of the feeling and start, focusing on action, I wouldn't say the feeling goes away, but it fades into the background because you're so busy doing. And that's what I found. Like, I wouldn't say I've overcome imposter syndrome, but it's like background music now. It's in the background. It's not in the forefront anymore. And I've busied myself with learning and improving and upskilling. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I'm so grateful that you joined. I'm happy that we have the recording because I know some people will be reaching out to me to look back. And I would love to invite you to come back again.
Sure.
And if there is any way we can help, our community can help, if you have any projects going on. I know you have a newsletter too, right?
Yes,
Your
I
website?
do. Yes.
Yeah, so make sure to sign up to Arit's newsletter. There's a bunch of links in the chat. And thank you so much. This
You're
was
welcome.
great. And I want to thank our community for joining in too and asking such great questions.
Thank you, Timur. Thank you, everyone at Creative Karma. You all are great. I've enjoyed myself. This is fun. I hope to be back soon. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
please email
absolutely.
me. I will respond to every email as much as I can, but please email me. I'm here for y'all.
Awesome. Let's give a round of applause to Arit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's break in.